Okay, so in this presentation, we intend to explore the role of multicultural awareness and competence as it fits into clinical supervision. So the supervision experience is an integral part in counselor identity development, yet the quality and the depth of that experience can vary greatly, as many of us know. So as professional counselors, as educators, supervisors, or supervisors in training, it's definitely our responsibility to provide counselors in training with the best supervision experience possible. So one that adheres to legal and ethical code, explores and honors cultural diversity and inclusion, and provides a safe space for learning and self-reflection. So some key tenets for our presentation, we intend to highlight ethical and legal considerations, discuss the responsibilities of the supervisor, the role of self-awareness for counselors in training, discuss the supervisory relationship with the supervisee, and discuss cultural considerations with the supervisee's clients. So my first question is, what are ethics and why are they important?
You're breaking up, Emily.
Were you asking like what ethics are and why are they important?
So what are they and why are they important for us as counselors?
You broke up there a little bit. No, so ethics are basically the codes that we follow as counselors to make sure that we are providing a good standard of care to our clients, and it helps us to make any decisions or choices if we're faced with like a dilemma or a concern that comes up in the counseling process.
Okay, thank you. So exactly, ethics are the moral guidelines that direct our behaviors as practitioners. So any counselors practicing in the United States, like myself, we're called to adhere to the American Counseling Association's Code of Ethics to inform our professional practices with clients. So there is a specific section in our Code of Ethics that addresses practice specific for counselor supervisors and supervisees. The overall purpose of our Code of Ethics is to protect not only us as clinicians, but also to protect our clients more so than anything else. So in terms of multiculturalism in ethics specifically, there's several different potential issues that could arise. Discrimination would be one. So whether that's refusal to work with certain clients or populations based on cultural identity. Could also be bias, so judgment or a negative attitude or outlook towards a client or a group due to the counselor's own values or beliefs or experiences. Stereotypes could be another potential issue that come up. So making assumptions or generalizations about a client or a group. Microaggressions, so intentional or unintentional exchanges that belittle or disparage members of cultural minority. And then there's relationship boundary issues. So it's important as the supervisor to make sure that we're maintaining an appropriate relationship with our supervisee. So not taking on the role of friend or counselor to them, but really strictly adhering to being their supervisor and acting within that role. And as well as making sure that our supervisee is maintaining appropriate boundaries with their client as well. Some legal considerations. It's our responsibility as the supervisor to be aware of the appropriate laws in our state or area of practice, as well as being informed about the laws in our supervisee's location of practice as well. So whether those are federal laws regarding privacy or protected information, or if those are state laws or mandates. That's something for us to explore and be aware of, as well as actively encouraging our supervisees to be aware of those laws as well. In terms of responsibilities, supervisors do hold the ultimate responsibility. So if your supervisee is acted in an unethical way, they get subpoenaed to court, or if they're at fault in a legal situation pertaining to their counseling work, our license is also on the line there. So it's important for us to make sure that we are knowledgeable about what our client or what our supervisees are doing in their sessions, what's going on, and that the supervisee themselves is aware that we are responsible for anything and everything that they do as well. Appropriate documentation is key. So the supervisee should keep accurate documentation of their own meetings with their supervisee, as well as teaching the supervisee how to appropriately document what's enough, what's too much, and checking in on that with the supervisee regularly. Because protecting ourselves from potential legal issues is so important, it's imperative for us to maintain liability insurance in the event that we do ever need to go to court or we're sued because of malpractice. And then the biggest thing that I can think of that's important is consultation. That's invaluable. As a supervisee consulting with the supervisor, anytime that there's a question or concern or you're not sure what to do, and then from the supervisor perspective, making sure that we're consulting with our other professional colleagues, our mentors, our state licensing board, and even with the legal team that our liability insurance companies often provide to us is very important each time that we're faced with that sort of situation. Okay, so in terms of the supervisor and supervision itself, can anybody just kind of shout out, like, what did supervision mean for you, or what does it mean for you right now?
For me, it's being able to consult with other people about any concerns or problems or questions I might have with specific clients. Being able to reach out, just if I have a question, just to get that feedback and that support.
Thank you, Heather. Anybody else?
I would say, kind of to add to Heather's comments, it's an opportunity to step outside of ourselves because there's so much internally that can be going on for us as clinicians, but also supervisors, and we're constantly learning something new. So being able to, like Heather mentioned, collaborate with others and consult with others is invaluable to that learning experience.
Thank you. Yes, so Sear and Dorley, 2017, they describe the process of supervision and that process to foster the development of young professionals, and it being the supervisor's responsibility to educate supervisees on the many facets of what it is to be a practitioner, as well as about the multicultural issues that can occur during supervision. So again, some of those responsibilities of a supervisor, it is someone to create and provide a safe space for supervisees to come in and ask questions and talk about the topics that are difficult to discuss. But it's also our job to be the gatekeeper. So if we do see concerns with a supervisee or a counselor in training, being able to talk to them about the concerns that we see, helping to remediate them, and really taking an interest in watching them and making sure that they're moving towards a better place of practice. And then proceeding, if they're not, proceeding with what needs to be done next to keep them from harming clients. That's our ultimate goal. The supervisee should always follow all ethical codes and responsibilities, as well as any legal considerations, like I said. Avoiding those dual relationships, so making sure that we are appropriate as the supervisor, that our supervisee is appropriate with their clients. And we also have the responsibility to self-monitor and be self-aware. So just continually looking at ourselves, exploring our own cultural identity, what our own values and biases are, and working through those things. Cultural competence is kind of the goal term. You know, if we were all culturally competent, you know, that's the end goal. So having cultural humility is important along the way. So that continual process of evaluating ourselves and reflecting within ourselves is important. There is an abundance of resources for counselor supervisors. Some of those include, of course, the Code of Ethics that does have a section that pertains specifically to supervisors, counselor educators, supervisees. So being familiar with those codes of ethics, abiding by those, talking with our supervisees about the Code of Ethics, challenging them to think about different case studies or examples and working through those. The Association for Counselor Education and Supervision, also known as ACES, put out best practices in 2011. That is a lengthy document, but it is a good one to go through and kind of look at all of the different things that supervisors are called to do, the best practices there. So just to name a few examples there, Standard 1C5 says that supervisors initiate conversations about cultural considerations with their supervisees. So again, being confident enough in ourselves where we are at in our own identity development to challenge our supervisees to think about that as well and have difficult conversations with them. Talk to them about cultural differences that may come up between them and their clients, as well as following their ethical codes, making sure that they're taking care of themselves. So that is another good resource to look at. And then, of course, there's the multicultural and social justice counseling competencies as well. That's a very good resource that's available that just goes through some different standards of practice for operating in the most culturally humble way possible as we practice as supervisors and as counselors.
All righty. What is the responsibility of a counselor in training or a counselor in general when it comes to a client's culture? Can anybody answer that? What is the responsibility of a counselor in training and or counselor in general when it comes to a client's culture?
I would say the responsibility would be knowing how their culture impacts their life and how others how people outside of themselves perceive them as a person and the culture they belong to.
Absolutely. That is an awesome answer. I appreciate that. Thank you.
In the chat, we also have to learn about it, be respectful, how their culture will play a role in their healing.
Yeah, all great answers. Thank you.
I think also just being aware of our own biases, you know, any biases or perceptions that we have about other cultures, and checking ourselves on that, just having that self-awareness.
Absolutely. Who's ever like been in session and like thought to themselves, wow, I don't know what to do here. I don't know enough. You can just raise your hand. Or
me, like every day.
Like, yeah, I know, same.
All the time.
I understand. But yeah, so it's important to self-reflect and be honest with yourself. What you know, what you don't know, be humble about it. Believe it or not, we don't know everything, even though some of us may think we do, but we don't. It is the counselor in training and or new counselor's responsibility to learn about their client's cultures from the client or a client's parents if you're working with kids. In a sense, it's consulting, it's learning about their culture. The client is the expert of their own world and the way they view their culture. An example, two individuals in the same culture may view the culture a little bit differently. Try to learn from them, because they are the greatest teachers to their own world. Please note that it is a supervisor's responsibility to ensure that the counselor seeking supervision is understanding their client and their culture, both. Understanding what it means to practice that cultural humility in this type of setting. Humility. What is cultural humility? A lifelong process to openness, self-awareness, and egoless supportive interaction, and self-reflection and critique. Always be on the trend to learn. Once again, you are not the expert of another's world. An individual must have an open mind or be open to interaction with a culturally diverse individual for cultural humility to take place. Have that open mind, have that open dialogue. Don't be scared. I mean, it's okay to say, I don't know. The same concept can be said for humility in general to yourself. Have an open mind, and having an open mind is crucial for individual, professional, and personal growth. Expectations. I hate that word, because we have a lot of expectations, but these expectations fall upon the counselor and the supervisor to ensure that the clients are receiving best practice. How well do you know your clients now? Questions to ask yourselves. Goals. Why are the goals important? It's important to always set goals for yourself. As a counselor and a professional, never ask a client or a peer to do something you're not willing to do yourself. Don't live like a hypocrite. You should always have at least one professional and one personal goal for yourself at all times. It is important for motivation and bettering yourself as a counselor and as an individual. If you don't identify goals, how are you going to know what to work on? So identifying those goals and as yourself as the supervisor or counselor, always important. Not only cultural humility important, but humility in general. We all have things we need to work on. Always have room to grow. Professional goal. An example for myself is I live in a community with a lot of individuals in the Latinx community and white community, and I work with kids. So it is my job as somebody who's working towards their play therapy licensure to learn about a culture from my clients or their clients' parents, because it may look differently. In play, I don't know if any of you are familiar with play therapy, but it can look differently depending on where that individual's cultures lie. Personal, to put more boundaries up when it comes to, this is just my own personal goal right now, putting more boundaries up when it comes to checking my email and my phone when it's my time to be away. In a sense, trying to break that addiction from my phone, because I see so many people struggle with it, like just being self-reflective. Like I'll check my email if I'm not careful 30 times a day. Does anybody have a goal they would like to share for themselves? If not, that's okay. And like take a moment to think about those professional and personal goals in supervision or counseling. Speak out in chat. Speak out or drop it in chat. Please let us know if you've had those type of conversations or identifying self-awareness.
So there are actually two. One said professional goals become EMDR certified, and another one is to continue to learn about cultural competency. Now, for the one that said, that talked about becoming EMDR certified, I believe that there is a certification process getting ready to come up, because I'm actually registered for it. I'm not sure what state you're in, but I don't really think it matters much. But I would definitely say, like, if your state has a trauma-focused organization look into that, that would be a great idea. Let's see, somebody else that continues to be open to those opportunities for learning and being okay with not knowing. Wow, that's amazing. Let's see, professional goal, get my certification in substance abuse counseling. Oh, and they take the exam April 24th. Congratulations. Yay.
Luck.
Awesome. And then let's see, somebody said get play therapy certified. Awesome. So, definitely for all of you that have these amazing goals, check with your state and see, how to actually go move forward and make those things happen. Because for me, I plan on being certified in EMDR, and that is something that I am really excited about. And especially once I got into the counselor profession and I saw how trauma really affected so many people, I wanted to go ahead and do this. Yeah, somebody in the chat said EMDR is expensive, though. It is, but if you want it, go ahead and start saving up for it, because they had like a student discount in my state, and so I took advantage of that. So save up for it, and once you have the money for it, make it happen. And let's see, somebody else said personal goal, graduate with second master's in counseling in December. Awesome. Yay.
Heck yes.
Woo. Awesome. So these are some really amazing goals, you guys. And keep it coming with what's going on in the chat, because we're of course we're definitely keeping up with it. All right.
Absolutely. Well, one more thing to add. If these goals like just kind of seem overwhelming, write them down. Write them down. Like give yourself benchmarks. Like by this time period, I plan on doing this, or I plan on researching more about X, Y, and Z topic. When it comes to licensure, like both of my licensures that I'm pursuing is I have, I want to have this amount of hours of in-person counseling and supervision by done at this time, and breaking it down, make it real for yourself. I mean, I know it's cliche, but actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. All right, guys, that was awesome.
Next slide.
All right, so the supervisor relationship with the supervisee, it's definitely important, because if you get a supervisor as a supervisee and it's not a good fit, it can affect the progression of the relationship, and it means that y'all aren't on the same page for what's needed from you both. And so you want to make sure that when you're looking for a supervisor, that you ask questions and you really vet them, and to make sure that they fit exactly what you need as a supervisee, and vice versa for the supervisor, making sure that that supervisee is a good fit to how you conduct supervision. And also being able to be fluid and be flexible is so important when it comes to the supervisor and supervisee fit. The next thing is like the benefits of being able to do one-to-one supervision, or dyadic supervision, or triadic group supervision, which is like 3 or more people in supervision. And so the amazing thing about the online counselor department for the Chicago school is that you have university supervision, where it's you and peers that you're currently in class with, and y'all can talk about cases, talk about issues you're having. And then it's also important to have your site supervisor, which is where you would do your individual supervision, because then you can kind of go into more detail and really have that one-to-one time that you really truly need, because that's really, really, really important to be able to talk about what's going on with you and really have the focus simply just be on you. Then the next is figuring out what works. Everything doesn't work for everybody. And so once you figure out what works as the supervisor and the supervisee, it makes the relationship a lot better, where both of you feel comfortable about sharing things, whether it's good, bad, or even, you know, the things that are uneasy. Because I know for me as a supervisee, sometimes it's hard for me to talk to a supervisor about something that they've done that made me feel uneasy or anything like that. But when I'm comfortable with the person and I know that I can go to them and actually talk to them about what's going on, it makes it a lot easier. And then, you know, like we've already talked about, you know, understanding the roles, responsibilities, and the expectations of the supervisor and the supervisee. And, you know, that's really something that you discuss in the beginning and that you continue to discuss, because things change. You know, the one thing that is inevitable is change. And, you know, the roles, you know, some parts of the roles may change, some parts of responsibilities and expectations may change. And especially expectations, because, you know, if a supervisor sees that the supervisee isn't really meeting a certain expectation, they may lower it and make it more attainable for that supervisee. And then supervision, it enhances self-awareness of treatment knowledge, skill acquisition and utilization, self-efficacy, and strengthening the supervisee-client relationship. And so really in supervision, it's a time for you to learn as the supervisee from the supervisor, and the wisdom that that person has gained over the amount of time that they've been in the profession. All right, and so then, you know, as the supervisor, you want to be able to know what supervision model is going to work best for the supervisee, because every model doesn't work best. And so, you know, here I have a few of them listed: the psychotherapy based model, developmental model, integrative model, functional model, or seven-eyed model. And so really it's just, you know, understanding and breaking down what these models are, and then being able to say, okay, for this supervisee or this, or, you know, this one, which one really works better? Because everything, you know, these aren't one fits all. Is, you know, just have to figure out what works best. And so, you know, if you're somebody that you really want to focus more on the development of your skills and the development of yourself as a professional, then the developmental model is going to be good for you. Or if you're somebody where you want to integrate everything and you want to be able to touch and tackle all different aspects of being a counselor and what that means, then the integrative model is definitely going to work. But as the supervisor, being able to have that openness to talk about what model works best for their supervisee or a group of supervisees is very much so important. All right, and so, you know, as the supervisee relationship continues, there are some guiding principles for that relationship. And so as the supervisor, it is their job to offer emotional presence and sensitivity, meaning that you're supporting the supervisee wherever they are and you're meeting them wherever they are. And it's also valuing vulnerability and competence, you know, with a supervisee being able to come and say, you know, I'm unsure about this, or even sharing some negative feelings that they may be having, or even some biases that they have about a client, because it's very hard for anybody to recognize and say, I have this bias or I'm having these issues with the client, because, you know, we never want to discuss those things. But allowing the supervisee to be comfortable being vulnerable, it makes the relationship a lot it makes the relationship mean a lot more. And it goes back into the code of ethics where it talks about being non-judgmental, and being able to have that openness and honesty and feeling like you can really truly open yourself and be honest and not be judged or ridiculed for what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And then it's also offering knowledge and experience with humility. And it goes back to what my colleague Mason was saying about humility, being able to, you know, not come in being all cocky, like you're the best that was ever to do it. But being able to, you know, to come and say, these are the things that I've learned, and I hope that these things can help you, in being able to be okay with the supervisee possibly not taking your advice because it may not fit them for where they are right now. And that's totally okay, but it's taking your ego out of it and going more down into what's important, you know, because what's important is the supervisee in that moment and what they need in the moment. And then the next one is developing a relationship to support continued personal and professional growth. Now, for me, I'm all about personal and professional growth when it comes to the supervisory relationship, and even when it comes to me being in my programs. When I did my master's degree with the CMHC online program, you know, for me at first I was like, oh, just professional, it's going to all be professional, but it also internally developed me personally as well, where I was able to really dive into some things that I was going through, and then really also understanding that there were parts of me that needed to change to better myself as a professional. And so a lot of people will think that personal and professional don't go together, but the thing is they do, because a lot of things that you may think or feel personally can affect your professional relationships, whether it be with clients, co-workers, bosses, anything. Those personal things can affect your professional relationships. And then, you know, the next thing is finding your identity as a professional and finding who you are within the counseling profession, and being able to have a supervisor that helps you with developing your professional identity is very essential, because it's not something that you can do on your own. It's really truly something that you need somebody else that's kind of been where you are to help you, because trying to do it on your own and you're still new and you're still fresh in the counseling profession, it's going to be difficult. But being able to have somebody there that you can talk to about things that you're experiencing as a counselor, as a person, and then being able to give you that wisdom and the knowledge that they've gained to help you to develop better into the professional that you want to be, it's very much so helpful. But then also really seeing that the supervisory relationship and being a supervisor is truly an art and a science. And it's something that as you continue to go through it, it's so beautiful and it's so worth it. And it literally is just one of those things that you won't see it in the beginning, but as you continue to go through it, you'll see how beautiful the relationship can develop, and you'll see how you develop and even how the supervisor develops, because it's not just a growing and learning opportunity for the supervisee, it's also a growing and learning opportunity for the supervisor, because as supervisors, you know, we don't know everything. And as supervisees, we don't know everything. And so being able to learn from each other and grow with each other, it's an amazing, amazing experience.
So can we just take a minute to kind of check in with everybody? Can you consider something that you feel like is important for you in that supervisor relationship, either from the perspective of a supervisor, you know, as being a supervisor to a supervisee, or from the perspective of a supervisor, what you needed or valued the most out of that relationship. I know for me, in my own supervision process, I valued the most just that my supervisor was very open, and I always felt very comfortable and safe to ask questions or to let her know when I didn't understand, or I felt like I wasn't where I needed to be with something, and there wasn't any shame or judgment in that.
I also wanted to let you know there was a question in the chat. It says, is there a book you can recommend for the different types of supervision models?
Okay, thank you. We will answer that in the chat. Can anybody share with us what was most valuable to you in the supervisory relationship?
I can go.
Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I value having transparency and also autonomy within a relationship.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the perspective of the supervisor or the supervisee, what was important in that relationship?
As the supervisee, the relationship, what's valuable to me is the authenticity of the supervisor.
Definitely, that's a huge thing.
I really appreciated someone that number one, that I trusted, a place that I could talk out some of my anxiety, because my first supervisory relationship was not a good one. And so because it was not a good one, it produced a great deal of anxiety. And my experiences in supervision produced a great deal of anxiety. And so when I had my second supervisor, I was very anxious, and it produced this anxiety and resistance in supervision. And so that judgment clouded my supervision, and it also impacted some of my relationships with my clients. And so I had to learn to talk out and discuss that anxiety, and also how it impacted my relationships with my clients, and how it impacted my work. And so my supervisor was able to kind of help me feel comfortable and help me work through that, and provided a very safe environment, which helped me become a better counselor and work through that.
There's also one in chat that says, I value autonomy, uniqueness, and empathy in any of its relationships.
Kind of piggybacking off what
Thank you
Dr.
guys so much for sharing.
Kind of piggybacking off
Go ahead, Mason.
Off of what Dr. Harris said. I was just reading something the other day how PTSD from a bad boss or a bad manager can be a real thing. It's something we don't think about, you know. We have one bad boss or supervisor or manager, and we carry that over into the next position. You know, we have that anxiety, we have that that expectations that things are going to go south, that you're just, I mean, if you have a micromanaging boss, let's take that for example, your next job that you get, you're going to expect your boss to try to micromanage you. You're just kind of waiting for the ball to drop. Yeah, but yeah, food for thought.
I think something that I think back on as a supervisee that was very valuable, especially in the presentation, is also focused on cultural development within the, or cultural considerations within the supervision relationship. When I was a supervisee, my supervisor really challenged me to be intentional about considering intersectional identities with the clients that I worked with, because I think as a supervisee, especially as a new counselor, when I thought about cultural identity, I thought mostly about race and religion, maybe even gender, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about all of the other components that made up our cultural identities. So it was something that really pushed me to consider how my cultural identities and the cultural identities of my clients interacted with each other within the counseling relationship, and really pushed me to consider what that meant for navigating that process and learning from my clients. So that was something that was really helpful for me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, always keep in touch with those mentors. They're always willing. In my experience, all of the mentors that I consider mentors are always willing to have that open conversation, and even those challenging, hard conversations. One thing from when I was working on my master's in counseling, she's probably my favorite mentor in that stage of my academic career. But one thing that will always stick with me from her is to never be a hypocrite, to never ask your clients to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm big on, like, that's why I was really reinforcing setting goals for yourself, because you're gonna be asking every client you meet to set a goal for themselves, and we can't go out and expect them to do that when we're not even willing to do that for ourselves. So I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you for sharing that. So role of a supervisor and clinician in cultural considerations. And so you are, like I stated before, you are not expected to know everything. You're expected to consult and find out and provide best practice to the ones you serve. What do you guys think are some of the most crucial roles for supervisors and counselors for cultural considerations? Drop in chat or speak up, whatever you guys want to do.
I can go. I think being open-minded, being honest about what you don't know, and having difficult conversations and being okay with having difficult conversations.
I think we as a society, I mean, this is just anecdotally, I think we as a society are scared to have those conversations. And that's why we are where we are right now. So I appreciated that. Thank you so much.
I agree. I definitely agree.
I agree with what she said, just being open and being open to your supervisee's experiences. As a supervisor, me personally, as a supervisee, I went to a supervisor once and disclosed my sexual orientation and said, I identify as queer, blah, 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 blah. I was telling my story about, why it was important in supervision. And instead of being very supportive, she actually stopped me and went, "What? No, you're not." And I was like, "Wait, what? How do you know?" And so I didn't feel very supportive in that moment. And it kind of made me question our relationship and how comfortable I was with her. And so being open to those conversations and being aware of like your own, again, those like biases and thoughts and whatnot is really, really helpful. Because again, like I said, like I feel not so great talking about sexuality with her now, whether it's something that I'm experiencing in session with the client or another client is talking about. And so it's not something that I would feel comfortable going to her about anymore.
Kind of that PTSD from a bad manager that said that you aren't something that you are. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that happen, Heather.
Can I piggyback off Heather for a minute?
Yeah.
So I had a similar situation in like supervision with my program when everything happened with George Floyd last summer, and there was like a lot of racial uproar. And I'm in Louisiana, so personally, like we had a lot of stuff going on in the state, and my program like kind of like brushed over it, and there was like no discussion about it. It was kind of like, oh yeah. And so like when I started practicum, like I brought it up and I felt uncomfortable being one of the few people of color within my program. And I was just like, I don't understand why this isn't like brought up. Like, why was there not more done? Like, why aren't we saying anything? Like, this is part of our profession. Like, why am I the one who has to bring it up? And so kind of like you say with that PTSD, is kind of like knowing the space that I occupy, being aware of it, but then also knowing that, okay, like I'm an advocate, like this is part of my profession, like I shouldn't have to be the one doing this. So then it's like, when I do say something, am I always gonna have to be the one to say something? And like, I guess kind of like the anxiety that comes with that of being one of the only few people of color, and like, okay, well, why are you always saying something about it? And then the other hand, it's like, well, why aren't you not? Like, it's kind of your profession too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our code of ethics is for us to be advocates for those hard conversations, whether it makes people uncomfortable or not. I want to really applaud you for going out and advocating for that conversation. We don't do that enough. Once again, I think we're scared, or some people are scared to have that conversation. So great job. Keep advocating. Keep advocating. Keep bringing that awareness to people.
Mason, can you repeat your question in chat? There's someone that may have missed it.
Yeah. Where's it at? What do you think are some crucial roles for supervisors and counselors for cultural considerations? Yep. This, I know it's cliche, but this is an iceberg. I thought it was kind of cool. It tells you, like, you know, the different components that Stephen was talking about when it comes to cultural identities and cultural beliefs and stuff like that.
Mason, hi. I just wanted to kind of respond to that question. Yeah, I think one of the things that I think is important is to have like inquisitiveness, to be curious about like historical things, because my site that I work at now, the counselors are all Caucasian and the 2 interns are Black, and majority of the clients are Black. And so really just even having conversations with my supervisor about, you know, convening groups to help, you know, minorities. So like we had a special group for African-American History Month in February, and so many clients showed up and they said so many things about things they can't talk about in groups, and how, because people don't understand them. And so having the conversation about, you know, the history behind some of the things that happen, and, you know, learning to ask questions about these things, I think is really, really important for both supervisor and supervisees as a continuous way of learning about these cultures.
Absolutely. And I hope you guys continue that group. It sounds like you really provided them a safe space.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's awesome. Rebecca, I will answer your question after I get through this slide. This is the last slide. There's a long list of considerations, but here are just some few. A counselor's or a supervisor's role. As stated before, it is a supervisee's job to inform their supervisor about everything they know about the client, to ensure that the supervisor has a good description, a good picture of the client. Without that, you can't, honestly, without that good description, like, you can't provide accurate and honestly safe, a safe environment for that supervisee's clients. However, it is the role of the supervisor to ensure that they have all of the information as well, to ask those questions, have those tough conversations. The supervisor should consider the counselor's approach with the client based on their culture. All theories and techniques should be tailored to the client's individual needs. This is the supervisor's job to ensure that the client is receiving best practice, as I said a minute ago. And if not, gatekeeping steps may be needed. Sometimes, I mean, in my experience, especially with peers in the field, I know some people still struggle with conflict. This is probably a position you're going to be in where you're going to experience conflict, and you're going to have those tough conversations. And as counselors, we should be able to. Priorities. The individual client as a whole is the priority. Gestalt, changed my mind. Cultural, personality, presenting issue, environment. Those 4 things are so crucial to the clients, for the client's treatment, because they're paying you or they're coming to see you for a reason. So definitely always keep those 4 things in mind: culture, personality, presenting issue, environment. All clients should be considered on an individual and situational basis. Not all clients are going to fit into a box, believe that or not. Supervisee's role. When it comes to cultural considerations in supervision and counseling, it is the clinician / supervisee's role to have that awareness and the self-reflection. If you take anything from this, self-reflection, 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 and realizing that they are unsure of something, to ask those questions. It would be the supervisee's role to reach out and consult with peers, i.e. supervisor and other counselors, that for help on a specific manner. If somebody specializes in, like Heather, let's take Heather for example. Heather and I are pretty good friends. She wants to work, she likes to work with the LGBTQ plus community, and she's more knowledgeable about that than I am. Heather doesn't really like to work with kids. I'm more knowledgeable when it comes to working with kids. So find peers with different specialties, different expertise, to have those conversations with. And I know Heather hates kids. No, I'm just kidding, Heather. But
Wow. You're revealing all my secrets today. No.
I am. I'm just joking. With that being said, it is crucial that the clients are receiving best practice, is what it all boils down to. So self-awareness, best practice. Whatever you can do to ensure those 2 things, do what you got to do. And then next slide should be questions. Where's the chat?
I'd also just like to say thank you to everyone that came and participated with us. It's definitely good for the 3 of us from the perspective of supervisors in training to hear your feedback, your responses to the questions that we asked. When you share your experiences with us, that's definitely helpful for us as well. So thank you for being open and participating.
Yeah, thank you all for taking an hour out of your day to spend with us and to learn something. I know we definitely appreciate it. Thank you to the professors that are in here. I know I see Dr. Harris, Dr. Wright, probably some other ones. So thank you all so much for taking your time to see and listen to our presentation, and thank you for your participation. And I definitely hope that y'all got something out of it.
Yeah. If you guys ever have any questions or want to consult about anything, I will be happy to drop my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out, ask questions. I'm always willing to build up that consultation relationship or collaboration.